Good morning and welcome to the Mayor's Weekly. We're pleased to have you with us. And last week we talked about the 4-point plan and our funding source and the work that's going on there. And that work continues this week, and I think there'll be a culmination today of the funding source, and we can move forward on that. And we'll report on that as we move along. What I shared with you, Kathy was with me last week, and pleased to have her join me again this morning. I told you we'd talk about grants. Week before last was a great week for this city with regard to grants. Maybe an unprecedented level of grants that the city was approved for, and and we're going to talk about those in more detail. Having been here 5 years, the grant business is something that I've had to start at ground zero learning about grants. The world that I came from, there were no grants. Whatever you had, you made it, and the old-fashioned way, you earned it. And but what I could see early on is grants, that there's a small amount of money out there in the grant pool, and there's a jillion folks that want that amount of money, and the end result is most people go away empty-handed. And so you put energy in and get nothing out. That's not a very good formula, is it, Kathy?
No, sir.
But one of the things that I've learned, and it mirrors a banking business, when we did banking deals, we were loaning people money. We wanted people to have some of their own money in the deal. And what I've learned, and Kathy's known this because she's been in government most of her working life, is that if we had some money in the deal, the likelihood that we'd get approved for a grant improved big time, and that's what we've seen here,
Yes,
Kathy. But we had 3 grants, and I'm going to let Kathy talk about the totals, whatever. But what you'll hear Kathy talk about too is we grant and how much money that we had to put in. And Kathy, I really believe that if we know a couple of these grants, if we hadn't had the money to put into the deal, there would have been no grant.
Absolutely. We wouldn't have even been qualified to have applied.
Right. But Kathy, if you don't mind, give an overview of what we had, and I hope you'll find this pleasing. There was some summary of the grants in our local paper a few days back, but I think it's good to look back at these and let Kathy give you the details, how much money we're getting, how much we put in, and what this money will do for the city.
Okay. I'll start with the Community Development Block Grant, Mayor. This particular grant is in the project area of the old West Jasper School, and it comes up to about 10th Avenue on 19th Street. It started out really as a project that the city was going to do paving. And as they started looking at that area to repave, they realized that there was some drainage problems. The sidewalks, also, there was problems there. The water lines needed to be replaced. And as they talked through that project, we began to realize, well, wait a minute, this is probably an ideal project for a community development block grant application.
And what we learned about the cost made it an ideal.
Made it. You're so right. Absolutely. Because we really didn't really have the funds to put that much in. So it took several years.
Yeah.
But the city has recently been awarded that community development block grant, with grant funds coming in at $700,000, and local funds between the city and the Jasper Water and Sewer Board will put $586,000. So we will have a total project in that area of about $1.3 million, and so that's going to make a very nice project. It should benefit about 192 people that live in that area.
And Kathy, that's a real dollar plug-in. I mean, that's not any smoke and mirrors or whatever. I mean, those monies will flow through your accounting system, will be paid out, won't they?
Absolutely. We we pay for all the expenses associated with that grant and then ask for reimbursement from the state. But luckily, we have the money available to us that we can pay our contractors very, very timely, and then, the state's pretty good about getting us reimbursed fairly quickly.
Okay.
And then the next one that we plan on doing will be the downtown sidewalks, which is what we refer to as our Phase 5 sidewalk project. And we've talked about this in previous meetings, that this particular project will be located on 20th Street, and it will include 2nd Avenue, 3rd Avenue, and 4th Avenue. We have a total project cost. First of all, the grant funds will be $640,000, and the city will provide $350,000 for $990,000, but almost $1 million project in redoing those sidewalks along Phase 5. Now that's going to include some lighting. We decided to add some lighting that will match what we have on 19th Street.
And Kathy, when you say Phase 5, that means just exactly, this is the 5th round of sidewalk work that's been done in this city.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Makes a big difference in the looks of the downtown area, but also safety for those that are using the sidewalks and making them more handicap accessible as well. So, and then the last one we'll talk about today is a total project cost of about $2.2 million, and that's going to be the project we're going to do on US 78 around the Sonic area. And I think most people realize the dangerous intersection area that if you're trying to turn into the Sonic area or urgent care, how dangerous that can be, particularly if you're going to be crossing the interstate there. So the city, along with ALDOT, ALDOT really providing the majority of this particular grant, is about $1.9 million, with the city coming in and providing about $300,000.
One of the things that this reconfiguring of this section on it'll always be Highway 78 to me. It'll never be 118. I just can't get there. But a tremendous amount of traffic. Jones Dairy Road runs generally north and south, and the north end of Jones Dairy Road plays out into Viking Drive, and we have our medical clinics there, and that brings a lot of traffic. And I'm not glad that people are sick, but I'm glad we have good health care in the city.
Sure.
And so that will help in how that traffic merges into Highway 78. But it's going to be a great piece of work, and when will this start? The order of things. When we were talking about this grant, what I told the folks, I said, we know that engineering is going to be very expensive for this. I said, we certainly don't want to pay for the engineering and not get the grant, because the engineering would be worthless. And they said, we understand. They said, you apply for the grant, and then you can do the engineering if the grant's approved, and that's the way it worked out. So the engineering is underway. We have a general idea of what it looks like out there, but that'll firm up, and the Alabama Department of Transportation will be the final authority on approving engineering work to make this work. And there've been quite a few accidents in that area, and traffic congestion. So I'm excited about that, because Highway 78, even with the interstate, still handles a great deal of traffic. And if you move around Jasper much, you see that. Kathy, one of the things that I didn't mention that we're going to talk about, but this will be fresh enough on your mind to comment, this business of having money to put into the deal. Let's go back 2 years now, 3, correct me, Kathy, the wonderful project that was done on Airport Road and 78 intersection. What that has done to alleviate traffic congestion, making that safer, that sort of thing. Before I was elected, I would read from time to time about work that was going to happen on Airport Road and Washington Bridge Road, and it never materialized. And I said, well, if I ever go to office, I'm going to try to find out why. And what I could find is that it traces back to, do you have your match money? Mm-hmm. Is that right? Mm-hmm. What we found is that there had been considerable amounts of grant money approved subject to having grant money, and those grants will evaporate. Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, they all have a drop dead date. And what we found that there was still some grant money out there that had a valid date subject to us having our grant money. And we were able to have a really good first year or whatever and had some money. And by us having our money to put into that, we were able to go forward with that project, or we still have the same old Airport Road if we hadn't had our grant money. Is that right?
That is right. You know, we talked about redoing Airport Road for at least 10 years before we finally were able to get that project accomplished.
Good. But you know, you put all this together, and it's over a $4 million plug into the city of Jasper, and that stacks on top of all the other things we do. It doesn't get in the way of anything else that we spend money on that we take into the city. So it's a great piece of work, and we work very hard to build solid relationships with the folks that and authority to issue grants, and not believing that they would do something that was less than the right thing to do for us, but having those folks know about Jasper, Alabama, and telling our story as often as we can and what we're trying to do, and then being able to take to them a summary of positive results. All of that has a bearing on helping us get grants, because those folks want to put state money, federal money that flows to the state and whatever, into projects that produce the most benefit for people. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Good. One thing I want to touch on that I always marvel at Facebook. I don't do Facebook, but I look at the city's Facebook page, and last week on our Facebook page we put out information about the committee that will work on our sportsplex, and we'll have a committee will be headed up by a city employee. 2 of our council members will work in the organization of it or whatever, and somebody said, who at that table knows anything about sportsplex? Well, what I want to share with you, I hope you're listening to this. A person at that table, name is Robert Nelson. Robert is a professional engineer. He owns Nelson and Associates. I don't know how many park facilities, whatever, that as a professional engineer he's designed. So please know that we weren't feeling our way through the dark. We had a high level of competency and understanding of park development at that table. So it wasn't, we don't know what we're doing and the size of it and whatever. If Kathy and her husband were going to build a new house, day one, they probably wouldn't know the size of the house they're going to build, would you?
No.
And so that's kind of where we're at, and, you know, what does it need to look like? So nothing abnormal about that, but be sure there was plenty of gray matter at that table to deal with park design. So with that, we'll wrap up, and we'll look forward to being with you next week. Not quite sure what we'll talk about then, but we'll have something pertinent to the operation of this city. So hope your week's good, and we look forward to being with you next week.